All right. Okay, subject-tos, you guys. This is such an important topic right now. Why do you think that I think it's so important? Why? Why is it good right now? Because interest rates are so much higher right now than they were just a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, people were still getting 2.5%, 3% mortgages, right? And now here we are at 7-ish, right in that range, right? So this gives you a huge opportunity. What does that mean? A lot of the who's in trouble? Oh, why would they be in trouble at the lower interest rate? They're getting behind? Okay, yeah, well, people are always behind, right? So there's always gonna be people that are behind in mortgages and that type of thing. So that's something that you always want to be considering looking for, right? Who's behind on a mortgage? Well, if they're behind on a mortgage and it's a good mortgage, why would you want to pay it off and cash them out? This is an opportunity for you to talk about doing a subject-to. So for me right now, this is a huge, huge thing because of the high number of mortgages that have been created over the years that were 2.5%, 3% mortgages. Lots of them out there. How many years were the mortgages like that? A long time. It felt like forever. I kept thinking, there's no way. I kept saying, oh, they're artificially held down. When are they ever going to go up to where they would be? My first house I bought was 10%. I have friends who bought them at 18%. I mean, and I was happy to get a mortgage for 10. My first house was in St. Clair Shores. It was my first little 3-bedroom bungalow there. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Okay, so here's what you're going to learn tonight, okay? We're going to talk about what is a subject-to, how they work, the risk of subject-tos. Yes, are there risks in real estate? Yes, if someone says, oh, there's no risk in this, they're lying to you. There's always a risk. The question is, how do you minimize the risk, right? How do you make sure that you're taking the least amount of risk possible that you would normally need, than what you should take, right? You always want to take the least amount of risk. And why subject-tos now? I kind of discovered that a little bit, right? But there's even more to it that might surprise you. When I put these slides together a year ago, I found something that I never knew for over 35 years of doing real estate. And I'm going to show that to you. I'm still baffled by it, okay? It's amazing. It's just something so crazy. I don't get it still. I know it's reality. I just don't understand why it is what it is, okay? And then steps for a subject-to. We're going to talk about what are the steps, okay? Where do you start, right? All right, and then afterwards, after I finish the presentation, then I will stay around and answer questions for you guys, right? And also, if for those of you who are interested, we're gonna have after hour at CK Diggs. I'm gonna buy pizzas for the table. So if anyone wants to go there and hang out and talk about more real estate, there's gonna be pizza. I've already called in, they know that you're coming, and they're gonna make a huge thing. And I don't mean just that you're coming, I'm coming too, okay? I will be with you guys. All right, but I just might be a little bit longer because I'm going to do some Q&A afterwards. All right, so let me tell you guys a little bit about how I got started in the business, okay? And for those of you that were here earlier, you kind of got the high level overview, right? My mom gave me my first real estate course. I took it on my road trip from Colorado to Michigan, and I learned how to do real estate investing, or learned about real estate investing, not how to do it at that point, right? And then I started going to the local real estate investor group, and I bought my first home, my first 3-bedroom bungalow home in St. Clair Shores with a credit card as my down payment. I didn't have any money. I was in debt. I made $10 an hour, okay? And that was with a degree. So that was really smart, wasn't it? So anyways, I got my first home. And my principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was $438 a month. Back in 1980, it was like early 86 probably by then, okay? So 1986, $438 a month. And I had moved here with a company called EDS, Electronic Data Systems, where they had moved about 14,000 people into Metro Detroit. We had nowhere to live. So everyone was in hotels and motels with a 6-month waiting list to be in any apartment anywhere. So I bought this house, and I knew that all my peeps were in the hotel, And I found two women to share a room. I had 3 bedrooms. They rented 2 rooms for me and paid $250 a month each. So it was $500 a month. My payment was $438. My $62 a month paid my credit card payment, and I was living free. Oh, they now call that house hacking. Okay, on Bigger Pockets, it's like house hack. I'm like, I did that in like 1985, people. Of course, But now there's a big name for that, right? And that's a big thing. Like you rent out the rooms, right? And it pays more than the payment, and you have cash flow, right? Well, that's how I started with the business. I was young. I got married when I was young. I had my twins when I was young, and then I got divorced when my twins were little, and I was a single mom. So then that's when I started getting involved in lease options and some more creative type of financing. But just to put it bluntly, I was broke, okay? I was still kind of broke. And then I started learning about this creative financing stuff that you're gonna hear about tonight. And then that's when I started building wealth and building assets to be able to do more and more deals with you. Then I got remarried, and now I have 5 kids, so Rachel's one of them. Okay, so my why started with my twins. They were little. They used to always go with me. It was really fun. They've seen more houses than most real estate agents will ever see in their life. I used to be like, come on, and they're like, and the weird thing is when they were little, I would also throw in a couple like big $1 million homes, just for fun. So I would take them to like some that needed work, and then some of them were really nice. And I mean, Rachel, you probably remember, I took Rachel to some too. I remember, she's gone to some too. And they'd be like, yay, which one's gonna be our bedroom? And I'm like, one day, honey, one day, not now. Not now, yeah. Then I got remarried. This is my family with Michael, my husband, and we have 5 children together. So I have my twins, and he has 3. And now my real why is my grandbabies. So those of you guys that follow me on social media, you know that I like post them all the time, and they're amazing. Rachel has 2 of them, and my daughter in Arizona has 2 of them. So, these are so cute. Okay, so I just still love real estate. And sometimes my husband says, why don't you retire? Like, let's just be done with this. And I said, because I love it. I have a passion. I have a deal that's brought to me, and I want to still figure out how to make it happen and put it together. It's what makes me tick. It's really fun. And, so that's why I told you about the deal earlier. I just got one in Auburn Hills that I'm just buying. I love finding real estate deals. And my big why is you guys, right? I care about you guys, and I want to help you. And one of my big passions now is to help other investors or future investors become really good at being an investor and really profitable at it, and teach them about financial literacy and how to handle money and how to make money work for you instead of you working for money. That's a big, huge passion of mine. I live in an over 55 community in Arizona. I know I don't look it, but I do. I live in an over 55 community, and I just assumed no one had a mortgage, and I don't know why. They mostly do. I mean, and it makes me kind of sad, and it's not because they can afford to pay it off. It's because they can't afford to pay it off. There's a difference, right? Like if you have a 2% mortgage and you got the money sitting in the bank or working somewhere else, there's a big difference between that and you have a mortgage and you're just like using your Social Security to pay it. Got it? It's tough. And I don't want that for any of you. And so that's really a passion of mine that drives me beyond, doing stuff for myself at this point, is I want to help others. Like Felicia, where are you, Felicia? How much, I'm helping her with these deals, and like, just because I love it. I love helping other people, and so it's just fun. And we've been spending some time talking through deals and how do you negotiate and what do you look for, and how do you get off ground zero, and what should you offer, and how do you look for things. I love that kind of stuff. So that's really my why I still do what I do. All right, so let's talk about what a subject-to is. A subject-to is when you get the deed to a property subject to the underlying mortgage. In layman's terms, seller gives you the title to their home, they got the mortgage on the home, they leave the mortgage in place, you start making the mortgage payments. I don't assume it. I didn't apply to the bank. I didn't ask for permission. I just do it. Okay? And if you're wondering, how do I just do it? Well, if you don't know how to make a mortgage payment on someone else's house and you have the extra money, you can make one on one of my Subject-Tos, right? There's a mortgage payment on it, right? So you know what I'm saying? Like your dog could write the check for a loan payment if they had a checking account and it would go through. Anyone can pay anyone's payment. Okay? That gets confusing to people sometimes. They're like, wait a minute, isn't the bank going to be like, think it's weird that you're making their payment? No, they just want to know it got paid. Yes, that one got paid. That one got paid. That one didn't get paid. We're going to start notices or whatever they got to do, right? So that's the difference on that, right? It's taking over that property without having to get a mortgage. I just want you guys to just let that sink in for a minute. This is huge. And for you wholesalers, you're one of my best places for getting Subject-To deals. Because you run across deals sometimes that you may not think, because usually a wholesaler will get a deal, a contract. They're going to cash the seller out within a certain time period. And then they walk away, right? They get their money. Someone else pays cash. It's usually that. Am I right, wholesalers? That's 99% of your deals. However, if they start looking at the deals as, wait a minute, is there an underlying mortgage? Is there a possibility for someone to take over that mortgage? Now you've got a different way to wholesale a deal. You've got that sub-2 deal that you can wholesale, or a land contract you could wholesale, or a lease option that you could wholesale. All of those are wholesalable, but they may be a different audience. Like a lease option wholesale might go to an intended buyer. It might not. It might go to another investor. It just kind of depends on what the deal looks like, right? But when you open up your mind to some of this creative stuff, now you're not just doing wholesale deals that are like, oh, I'm going to do cash and that's it. It's, I'm going to be able to do cash and these other things. Now your marketing dollars just went a lot further for you than those deals that you're throwing away. You're like, oh, that's not a good one. There's not enough meat on the bone for that. I'm going to dump it. Don't dump them. All right. So here's an example. This one is in Auburn Hills that I bought on a Subject-To in the fall. This one came from a wholesaler who might be in this room today. Okay. Okay, so here's an example. This is a real deal that I just did, okay? Here's the cash out of pocket. Seller wanted 20 grand to walk. Give me 20 grand, walk away, I'm out of here, okay? The wholesaler wanted 12 grand. And there was two of them. They split it. A lot of wholesalers split deals. One markets the others, the other market, whatever, they split it. So they got 6 each. I don't know how they did it, but whatever. It was 12 grand, okay? And I did about 15,000 in rehab in this property. Okay, so the total out of pocket was 47 grand. Now, these are even numbers, but I will get actually really detailed here in a minute with the real numbers, but this is kind of high level, right? So it's not, is it exactly 15? No. Okay, is it exactly 47 out of pocket? No. Is it exactly 20 to the seller? Yes. Exactly 12 to the wholesaler? Yes. Okay, those are exacts, right? All right. Their mortgage payment was $1,250 a month PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. They basically had a first and a second mortgage. The first mortgage was at 3.1 or 2 maybe percent, and there was a second mortgage at 0% for 30 years. So in my head, I averaged that as 3, because the second was a little bit lower. 0 for 30. 0 for 30. Yep. Okay. So I'm like going, this is cool, yeah. Okay, rental rates in that area about $1,800 to $2,000. Okay, so I figure it could maybe net around $500 to $750 a month with the tenant in there, right? But it's really not going to net that because also the taxes are going to go up because they're going to be non-homesteaded. Everyone with me on that? Because it was owner occupied before. So I'm like, okay, well, $500 to $750, not bad, but if I have to put $47,000 into it. That's about a 15% return. That's not bad, but it could be better. So I bought it in October of 2022, and at this point I was like, I don't know when I'm going to sell it. Okay, so here's what the example of a sale on a land contract. So this is now I own it. It's in my name, but the mortgage is in someone else's name, and I make the payments. Right? That's a Subject-To. Now I'm going to find someone who needs a land contract, And I'm thinking they're everywhere. So, right? So the land contract, here's what I was going to do. 280 for the land contract. 280 grand for the land contract with 40 grand down. That would bring that to 240 of the land contract would be the land contract balance, right? At 8% of that balance, just the interest only portion would be 19,200. Is everyone with me? Okay, I just take it just straight up, not the payment, just what would the interest only at 8% be? Okay, so it's 19,200. I owe 185,000 at this point. I paid the 20 plus the 12, so you can kind of add in your head what I paid, right? But I owe 185 on those mortgages, those two mortgages at 3%. It'd be 5,500 a year on interest. The difference between that is $13,650 a year, which equals $1,137.50 per month. So I'm like, let me think. Should I rent it or should I sell it? What would you do? Okay. Yeah, right? Well, you're going to wrap it. What's what we call a wrap. So a wrap, when you hear someone say, I'm going to wrap that mortgage, they just mean you're taking a lower interest rate mortgage. I'm taking a 3% mortgage over here that I owe 185 on, and I'm wrapping it with a bigger mortgage for a little bit more interest rate or more interest rate. In this case, it's quite a bit more, right? So I'm wrapping it for $240,000 mortgage over 185 for 8% versus 3%. So the difference is significant. And I don't care about the taxes because it's going to be homesteaded. And I don't pay them anyways if I'm not the owner. So there's a big difference on this one. This one makes a lot more money than the rental. But the rental is kind of tempting because it's a low interest rate mortgage and I could hold it a long time. And I'll show you why that matters in a bit. But 1,137, so this one I'm like, okay, it gets done, the property's done, I put it on the market, I put it for only land contract. I'm not gonna accept anything but that. Not one person called me for a land contract. Except out of Zillow. When I put it in Zillow just to test it out, I got a few there. Nothing looky-loose. They didn't even come to look at it, I don't think. So I put it on the MLS for land contract. I got 3 offers within a couple of days. All of them were conventional. And I was like, did you not read the thing? Because I didn't think when you set up the showing, I had to tell you, like, you know, you are looking at the land contract, right? But they all came in as conventional. Okay, every single one of them. And I ended up deciding to take a conventional because I thought, well, if there's no interest in land contracts and everybody wants to pay over what I'm asking, all my offers were above asking, maybe I should just sell it, right? So I did. Here's the details on that. Wait, let's go back to the profit on that one. I'm sorry. Let me finish the profit on that. 47,000 out of pocket, 40 grand down. Okay, so I would be negative 7 grand out of pocket, right? When you do a subject-to, if there's an escrow for the taxes and insurance, I get that. When I do that, I get that. I just don't know what it's going to be yet. It's going to be something, but I don't know what it is until the end of the mortgage and when it's paid off, right? I don't know what that check will be, that refund. Are you with me on that part? So there's a question, but I know it's coming. That's part of my deal. They owe 240, I owe 185, so the difference is 55,000. Minus the 7,000 difference from above, I would net 48 grand on this deal, plus the cash flow every single month I have it. 1,100 and whatever a month. So, and plus the escrow at the end. I'm like, slam dunk. I'm definitely doing this, right? Right? Oh, I didn't do that though. Because I didn't get an offer on it that way. Not one person came with a land contract offer. So I decided to sell it outright. I have this saying in life, and it's you never, ever get hurt taking a profit. How do you think I learned that one? So if I can sell something so I decided, you know what, it's obviously not meant to be this land contract buyer at this point. So I might as well take one of these offers. And one of them was pretty strong, so I ended up taking it. So no one bought on a land contract, which is a bummer, but you're not going to cry for me either way. Okay. So my out-of-pocket again was 47. I owed 185 on the loan balances. I sold cash out. They cashed me out. I sold it for 281, less commissions, fees, closing costs, all that stuff, right? Okay. So my net at closing, this was my exact check at closing, 82,250.89, right? Less the 47,000 plus and this is an exact amount, my escrow check, 32,58.33, net profit of 38,509. Do you feel sorry for me? No. Okay, it's not as good as the other one. Wah, 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 right? I would have rather had the other one. However, I'm unhappy with this one. I go with the feel of the market. If there's not a lot of interest in it at that time, maybe it's just kind of ramping up to be interesting, right? Maybe I should have done it at 6%, made it better than the current rate. I don't know. It still would be good, right? The 3% spread. So you could get creative with these, but for me, my practice is turn it, take the money and run, and that's what I did with this particular one. Okay, so that's a real deal that I just closed on very recently. So yeah, I don't mind that one deal. I'll take it all day long. Okay, what are the risks? So are there risks in subject-Tos? Yeah, there are. Like we already said that, right? So one is, and this is the number one question you guys will always ask me, what happens if the loan is called due? Because there's this thing called a due on sale clause in every mortgage. Well, 99.9% of the mortgages have a due on sale clause. And that says that if you transfer an interest in the property to somebody else, the lender could, may, can call the mortgage due. Oh, it doesn't say they will call it due. Did you hear the difference? Yes. They could. It doesn't mean they will. And it's very, very, did I say very enough? Rare that they would call it due if you're making the mortgage payments. Okay? Which I have heard of someone called due. And Johnny's one of them. In all the years I've been speaking, in 35 years, I've had a handful ever of people I know. Not any of mine. John had one.
Somebody else in the group did too. I remember a couple weeks ago we talked about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's very rare. And I'm going to tell you how to minimize that. Okay? It's very rare, except for John. We're going to sing about that tonight with whatever, what's it called? The 7 ladies, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the loan would be called due. One of the reasons is this is the trigger, insurance. Okay? There could be an insurance hang up, and I'm going to share with you what I do. Okay? On your insurance policy, because the owner currently has a policy in place, the old owner. Okay? You could leave that in place and just create another policy, but then you're paying for 2. I don't like paying extra if I don't have to pay for 2, right? So what I do is I make sure that I put it in my LLC, okay? Then I make sure that they're named as additional insured. That doesn't give them a right to it if the house burns down. That means they have liability protection if someone slips and falls and sues them and me and everybody else, okay? But what it does is it shows their name on that policy for the lender to identify, yep, Joe Smith's loan, and it's now 123 XYZ Street LLC. Okay, match, right? 99.9% of the time, that's gonna work just fine. Oh, I thought that was me. Ooh, okay. Okay, so that's gonna work just fine, okay? And you wanna make sure that mortgage company's named on there. They must be named on there, okay? They have to be named on there. If there is not a policy in place, then you're gonna start getting letters, and you're also gonna be in default of that mortgage. Everything's gonna be snooped on, okay? So I like things clean and easy. Prior to that change, and right at the closing table, my sellers also sign a letter to the mortgage company stating that they are moving their property into an LLC, and nothing on my letter lies about what's happening. It just doesn't tell the whole truth. It just says the truth, just not the whole truth. Does that make sense? Because I'm not going to lie or commit fraud. It's a felony. I mean, just, you know, I don't look that great in orange, so I don't like doing those. So, but I have a letter that basically it's written to the mortgage company stating that the seller is moving it to an LLC, that it's their property is being transferred to an LLC. It is. It's just my LLC. They're going to assume it's theirs, but it is mine. Okay? And that they're going to continue to make sure the mortgage payments are made as they've always been made. Well, if they didn't make them before very well, they could say that we're going to actually start making them on time or something. You know, that letter is modifiable, right? But that's a letter that goes to the mortgage company. So they're going to receive that first, then they receive this new statement. They can kind of tie all that together. It's a very clean, easy way to kind of keep them off your back and keep that whole due on sale clause thing away from you. Okay, that's the biggest risk. Now, how do you prevent that? Is the biggest way to prevent it, what I just shared with you. However, the other thing that you want to consider is that, let's say they do call it due. This is why whenever you buy a property, you have to buy right. No matter how you get it, you have to buy it right, because you need multiple exit strategies. So if I'm planning that I'm going to wrap it, or I'm going to flip it, or I'm going to do whatever, and now all of a sudden there's this issue with the due on sale clause, then I have an issue of what do I do? So I'm going to throw it out to you guys, because you're going to come up with all the answers. I don't even have to tell you all of them. What could I do if my note was called due? What? Sell it. Oh, gosh, I could sell it. Okay, good. As long as you buy it right, you could sell it. Go ahead. What else? I could deed it back to the homeowner, but if I just put 40 grand or 50 grand in there, I'm not too happy about that. I don't want it in their name, but yes, could that work? Yes. I don't like that one as much, but it is possible. That is an idea. Go ahead. Refinance it. So if I've been making the mortgage payments for 6 months and it's in my name, guess what? I just seasoned the title for mortgage company to say that property's now been seasoned. And by the way, it would take at least that long for a mortgage company to even catch up with all this, okay? So you could absolutely refinance it. What else?
Pay it off if you have money.
Pay it off if you got the cash. And if you don't, you could borrow it from someone. Partner with someone. Maybe you don't have the cash, but your friend does, and you got a lot of equity in this deal. Do you think they might lend the cash to split it? I might do that for someone. So keep that in mind, you know. I mean, yeah, so there's lots of options if it's called due, but you got to make sure that the deal's right when you buy, right? Because you, like we talked about earlier when Jim interviewed me, is you got to buy it right. You've got to buy it where you've got options. Because if you don't have options, then you could be, you know, in a bad situation, right? And in that case, you may have to deed it back to the seller and walk away. You know, that would be, that's not good, right? Yeah. Who said?
Deed it back to the seller, taking a page from Bill Cook's playbook, you have them grant you an option to buy the property for the original agreed upon sale price at any time in the future.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep.
And then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but that's way deeper than this conversation.
Well, still.
Are there ways around everything? Yes. Guys, there's so many ways. You could land contractor from them or something, and for zero down, and then leave it in their name, and then, but see, it's still a sale, by the way. That is a sale.
It's a sale, but they don't.
The deed stays in their name.
Correct.
I get it. But the insurance shouldn't. Here's the deal with insurance. I'm just going to give you guys a clue here. You know that insurance, first of all, if you leave it in the seller's name and they're not on title, it's a waste. That policy doesn't exist. If you have insurance on a home and you bought it under your name personally, and then you move it to an LLC, is it covered?
It will if you insure the LLC.
Not unless you insure the LLC. If the owner says Wendy Patton, and now it's Wendy Patton's LLC that I deeded it to, guess what I just did to my insurance policy? Yeah, I avoided it. So you have to make sure that matches who's on title. So technically, yes, on a land contract, they're on title, but they don't own it if there's a memorandum recorded, which I would never buy something that didn't record a memorandum. or some interest in that property. But that gets a little more detailed, so I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole.
Could you do what you do here, though, instead of you getting the new insurance policy, just have the original homeowner put you as an additional insured, or your LLC?
So if they put me as additional insured, then I'm not the owner on the policy, and they can't change the policy. They have to put me on there. It has to be a new policy issued. The owner, if it's Wendy Patton on the original policy, that has to be canceled and a new one issued under my LLC. Yeah, otherwise, I'm just additional insured, only means I have liability protection. Whoop-de-doo, someone slips and falls. But if that place burns down, they're getting the money, and I'm not. Okay, so these are I don't want to go into too much details. I'm going to hold, you guys, let me hold questions, okay, till the very end. I promise you I'll stay and answer any questions you might have. But I want to make sure I get through this before 9 o'clock so that you guys get out in time and get pizza. All right. 4 simple steps to success, okay? The first one is you want to find a great deal, right? We're going to talk about how to find a deal. Agree on the terms with the seller. What do those terms look like? What could they look like? Determine your exit strategy and then close on the property. Okay, so we're going to first talk about finding great deals, right? When you find a great deal, there are 2 types of motivated sellers, I think. There's motivated sellers with bad debt and motivated sellers with good debt. So bad debt means they're in trouble financially, right? They are behind in payments, they have liens, they have judgments, whatever. They're kind of in financial trouble. That's what I would call bad debt to them. Good debt would be like, it could be just that they have an extra payment and they don't really like it. No one wants an extra payment, but maybe they built their new home and their old one hasn't sold yet or something like that, right? If it's good debt, you could do a lease option. Bad debt or good debt, you could do a subject-to, if it makes sense. It doesn't matter which one. I've bought from sellers that are behind on payments, and I've bought from sellers that pay me to take their deed. And I've bought from sellers that there's nothing wrong. Like these people that I bought, that one in Auburn Hills, it was the weirdest thing. They were behind in payments, but they had the money. And she's like, I make a lot of money. And I'm like, well, why didn't you pay your payment? She goes, well, I will. And I go, go ahead. She goes, I'll do it right now. And I go, okay. And it was like a month late. And then she was like, I might need to use my mortgage later. And I'm like, you might not be able to. I go, there's 2 reasons. One is I'm going to have a mortgage. Your mortgage is staying in place in this home. But the second reason is you were just over 30 days late. You're not going to qualify for another mortgage for a while. Oh, okay. It was like, it was no big deal. Like, oh, okay, so I was late. All right. I got the money though. And I go, well, make it. So they did. Like she made all the payments. She caught it up. But sometimes you have to catch it up. Otherwise, if I had to make payments on that, I would have taken those payments up to 20 grand that we agreed to. But it's because she made them, I didn't have to. So either way, I didn't really care either way. But I think they felt better about getting that $20,000 to walk. All right? So here's some situations that motivate sellers. Death of a loved one. All of these exist. I bought from every one of these types on a sub-to or lease option or both, right? Death of a loved one. Lost their job. Divorced. Inherited. Moving out of state and area. That was their situation. They were moving to North Carolina. They moved. Boom, we're moving. Well, when do you want to move? 3 days from now. Is that okay? Well, what if I said no? What are you going to do? Your house isn't on the market or anything. They were just, they literally would be ready to leave in like less than a week. That was very fast. Very, very fast. Okay, the bottom line is they want to stop worrying, about the situation in their life, and they want to get on with their life, I should say, and they want to stop worrying about that debt, that mortgage, okay? So situations that motivate sellers, here we go. Lease option sellers, they don't need their cash out or they have no equity. Those can work with a lease option seller. Subject-to seller, they don't need their mortgage paid off. They may or may not need cash. They may or may not have equity. Any of those situations exist, okay? So for subject-to sellers, it's just a little bit more choices potentially. But not everyone wants to give you the deed and leave the mortgage in their name. But it's very weird how a lot of people will leave the mortgage in their name by you just asking about that. All right? So what are we looking for? We're looking for a seller who's motivated, of course. We're looking for good mortgage terms. Here's the deal. if they have a mortgage that happens to be a mortgage an adjustable mortgage, which there really aren't many of them right now, but they go through phases. So, depending on the times, they could be really popular or they might not be. I don't like those because those could change significantly. Now all of a sudden what was a good deal before is not, right? If it went from 2.5 to 7, that would not be real good. You saw the difference in payments just on interest alone. All right. But so good. I'm looking for good mortgage terms. I love it when they've paid down 10 years or 15 years already. I love those. I bought one in 2000 and I want to say 9 or 10, back in the bad part. They had 7 years left on that mortgage. Yeah, and it was three or four sisters who their mom died. They had lived in the house for a while. Now it was during this bad time. Now they all of a sudden both all decided, you know what? We're going to go our separate ways. We're going to buy, rent, whatever. We're moving out, and we want to sell it. I paid $4,000 for them to walk. That house was paid off in 7 years. Most of my payment, the payment was $800 and something a month, and I rented it for $1,595 back then. And most of the $800, most of it went toward principal. More than half, because it was 7 years left on it. Okay, so those are when you're like, okay, like I'll take all those I can get. That's good mortgage terms you're looking for. So you're looking for a fair price with all the terms included, right? When you're talking about a price with a subject-to seller, I'm usually talking what they're going to walk with. I figure out what am I assuming, that plus what you need equals what I'm buying it for. But I only talk to them about what they need. You need $20,000 to walk? That's what we're talking about. And they get, when I close, and I close with legacy title with them, and I make sure, like I have one tomorrow, that they have a net. They're netting 75. I'm paying all the fees and cost. And same thing with that particular deal. They got $20,000 and I paid for everything else. Because you can get title insurance with subject-tos. It's just that everything's insured except that mortgage. I mean, the whole title's insured with that as an exception. In other words, Wendy, we're insuring the title completely, but there's this mortgage on there that you know about, which is, of course, I know about because that's the subject-to. And you have to figure that out. We're not getting a payoff. We're not figuring out if it's the balance. We don't know anything about that mortgage. It's just that's not insured. Everything else is, okay? And that's the way I like doing them because I don't want any surprises. All right? You want to make sure that you figure out like how long till you assume it. When do I start making payments? How many payments are they going to make? Are they making any more? Any renovation? Do I need to do any renovation to the property? Almost every property needs some renovation, right? Even if it's just paint. So let's talk about generating the best leads still. Word of mouth. Great way to find deals, right? Tell people what you do. Then they start telling you, hey, did you know that Sally down the street? Yeah, she's moving and she hasn't even listed it with a realtor. She wants to get rid of it. It needs some work or whatever. Boom. Direct mail marketing. I'll show you some direct mail marketing pieces that you can use to do these deals. I don't use a lot of direct mail marketing. I like wholesalers. They pay for the direct mail marketing. And I pay them to do that and just bring a deal to me. Is that cool, wholesalers? You want people like me, right? And I need people like you. You're the deal makers. You're the deal finders. And I love that. I don't have time for all of it. You don't have time for all of it. So they do that part. They get paid. And I do my part and I get paid. All right? Wholesalers are my favorite. RIA members, just right in here, just letting people know what it is that you do, what you're looking for. Lots of different ways to find good deals. So here's some direct mail. If you guys want these, I'm going to let you take pictures of these. I'm not going to read them all to you. Okay? So here's some different ones, right? These are just these are just examples. Okay, everyone got it? Or read it, You can make them up. By the way, all these companies like yellowletters.com, yellowlettercomplete.com, just Google it. And they have all the letters for you already written. And then you can tell them what list you want to send it to. This is what wholesalers do a lot too. They'll buy a list of pre-foreclosures, or they'll buy a list of probate, or they'll buy a list of back taxes, or, mortgages that were from between this time and this time, or it could be anything. They can pull whatever you need. And then they have different letter examples, and you just modify it the way you want. And then they merge that list with your letter. Boom, they send it out for you. That's direct mail marketing, right? And then you got to be ready to answer or have someone answering the phone, right, when they call. Here's another one. I don't like this one. It's just very simple. There are several options available, you know, for people who are thinking of selling. And it's just simple. Hi, my name is John, and I'm interested in buying your house, blah, blah, blah. And this one I like. I can buy it as is. I have cash. It goes quickly. I will pay out closing costs. No realtors or commissions. Now, I didn't say that's how I'm going to buy it. I just could buy it that way. See, I'll give them choices too. Oh, you want me to pay? Oh, you want me to pay cash? Well, then it's this much, right? But I can assume your mortgage is this much. Or I can get it on terms. It's going to be higher. Because if I have to use my cash, it's going to be a lower purchase price. Here's some more. All right, so now that tells you, it gives you a couple of ideas on finding some deals that we talked about earlier. Agree on the terms. We're going to talk about those terms. Then you get to determine your exit strategy and close. So agreeing on the terms. Here's the thing. You want to review the current mortgage. I read it. I only understand about this much of it, really. And I don't care. Because all the rest of it's like stuff they're not going to change anyways. They're standard and, you know, clauses that are going to be in mortgages. You're looking for the main things, right? What's the interest rate? What's the payment? How many years do I have on it? Is there any escalating mortgage deal or whatever? Am I going to have to, is that interest rate going to adjust? I mean, you're reading it for that kind of stuff. Make sure you know what that mortgage says. High level, at least. And if you don't know what it says and you need someone to interpret it, find a mortgage broker who can help you with that. They'll help you. They might need to help you refi it later, right? Or be a mortgage person for your buyer if you're going to sell it. So build a relationship with someone that can help you a little bit. I'm looking for that, like I said, interest rate and term. Also, I'm looking for any balloons. They're pretty rare in mortgages these days, but they do exist. And they are possible to exist. For sure on land contracts, of course, we have a lot of balloons on land contracts. And by the way, what does a balloon mean?
Money's due.
Money's due. What happens to balloons? They pop, right? That means at some point this thing's popping, and that's when it's, you know, you got to pay the piper, right? When that balloon payment is due, that's when that mortgage is due in full. So if you might only pay on it 3 years, it might be amortized like it's a 30-year mortgage, and that's your payment. But whatever's due at that 3-year mark, that amount is still due to the seller, and you need to figure it out. You got to refinance it, bring a partner in, sell it, whatever you got to do, you got to pay that off. That's a balloon. So you want to look for those. Those are very rare. Interest rate increases are very rare. At this point, that doesn't mean it might be different tomorrow. Those things go in cycles. How much has been paid off? I always look at that. How many years have they been paying? What they start with on the mortgage, and then I look at the amortization and see where it stands now. That's what I'm assuming. Then you want to get your purchase agreement signed, along with what I call a seller's acknowledgement form or statement, right? This is something that I created that's got 25 acknowledgements that they're signing off on to make sure there's no confusion for anyone later of exactly what's happening between the seller and me, okay? Then you want to get your title insurance ordered. Make sure the title's clear, because if there's a mess in the title, then this could be all for naught anyway, or it's got to take more time to clean it up. So here's an example of seller acknowledgments. I have 25 of them. This is part of my course that I offer that's got all of the acknowledgments. But I'm going to give you guys a couple and kind of share with you, like, these are the types of things they sign off on. Every single one they initial, okay? They're satisfied with the sales price. I understand I may be selling the property for less than market value, but have chosen to do so because circumstances dictate that an immediate sale, even at a discounted price, is in my best interest. I am satisfied with the sales price I have negotiated. Loan in my name. I understand that the loan for this property will stay in my name, and it could stay in my name until the loan is matured. The buyer has the right to keep the loan in my name for the length of the remaining loan time. This might affect my ability to secure additional credit at some future time. Okay? They're signing each one of these initialing. And then I've got 23 other ones, right? Of course, I have one on due on sale clause. It's a little bit longer, and I want to make sure they understand what will happen with the due on sale clause. Okay? So when I was doing this presentation last February, and I was pulling this together for you guys here, and we had the snowstorm, I was going through the amortization schedules of different interest rates to show you what it looks like, and I had this moment that just blew me away. Okay, the light bulb moment, right? All right, here it is. I'm going to show you. First of all, we're going to look at some amortization schedules, and this is what blew me away. What is an amortization schedule? What did someone say?
Schedule of all payments made, what goes to principal,
What goes to principal, what goes to interest, right? It's a schedule for the whole length of the mortgage time. So the amortization schedule, if it's a 30-year mortgage, the amortization schedule technically goes for 360 payments. 30 years times 12, right? So that's what an amortization schedule is. It calculates how much of the payment goes toward principal, how much toward interest. Taxes and insurance are extra. They're not part of the amortization schedule. They might be part of the mortgage payment, but they're not part of the amortization schedule. Only principal and interest are, okay? So I want to share with you like how interest rates work a little bit, and how does 10 or 15 years of paying off a mortgage play into the deal, okay? So here we are. All of these are $275,000. Okay, this is the part that's going to blow your mind. At least it blew my mind, okay? Every one of these, I'm only using 275. I'm only using 30-year mortgage, okay? Now, at a 4.5% interest rate, the principal and interest payment for 30 years is $1,393.38. Okay? By the way, I use like bank rate, amortization schedules. You can Google any amortization schedule, use any one you want. They're all going to show this kind of result and the same numbers, right? All right. So, month one, the principal of that payment of the $362.13 goes toward principal, reducing the mortgage balance. Everyone with me? Yes. Keep that in your head. What was the interest rate? 4.5. Just remember that first payment, okay? Now, here we are, 10 years later. Look how much goes toward principal, $565 a month. Just over half now, okay? 15 years, $710 goes toward principal. Got it? Okay, now, let's look at an interest rate of 6.5%. Okay? 6.5%, same thing. 30 years, $275. Now the payment's more, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Of course it's more, right? It's higher interest rate. So, this is the part that doesn't make sense to me. Payment number one. How much goes toward principal? How much was on the other one? Why would the principal amount be different? I know people like Jim, who's an engineer, can figure this stuff out. But it does not make sense to me, guys. Of course the interest is higher. The payment's going to be higher, the interest is higher. That should be the only thing different in my mind. But it's not. The higher the interest rate, the less goes to principal from day one.
Hey, they call it a racket in the mortgage industry.
Yeah. Well, this is really key. Okay, this is really key. Now look, 10 years later, 470, still not as much as the first one. After 10 years, then 15 years. It's not till the end of a higher interest rate mortgage does it flip. On the beginning of a lower interest rate mortgage, it happens in the beginning. Now here we are, 2.5%. How many mortgages are at 2.5%? A whole lot of them. Now the payment, principal and interest is $1,086. Now, how much do you think goes toward principal of that? You get free pizza tonight, Kurt. 513, you guys, almost 50% of the payment from day one goes toward principal when you have a low interest rate mortgage. So it doesn't matter if the person signed the mortgage yesterday, they want to do a subject-to with me. If they have a low interest rate mortgage, bam, half of it is going toward the principal. That's huge. Okay? Now 10 years later, $656. 15 years, $743. Now let's compare all three side by side. 2.5, 4.5, 6.5. The PIT, the principal and interest payment on the top. Year one, principal on the left, interest on the right. Year 10, year 15. Up to even 15 years, the lower interest rate mortgage puts more principal toward the payment than the higher interest rate ones. Except the 6 and, see, even the 4.5. It doesn't change until later, like 20 years. So what do you get? Play 20-year mortgage? So this is why this is so crucial right now, that you pick up these low interest rate mortgages for subject-tos, guys. Wholesalers, please find out when they got their mortgage. Like, they're somewhere in, most likely they're in that time frame where they're low versus high. Now, does that mean I wouldn't take something on a 6.5? No, it's not as juicy, nearly as juicy as a 2.5%. Right? Think about it. If I compare the 2.5%, the 513 compared to the 248, I'm making over $250 more a month every month from day one. Day one of the mortgage. On just that difference. To me, that's a big deal. A lot of people are thrilled with that kind of cash flow every month. This is on top of any cash flow. And you're more likely to be able to cash flow something that's 2.5%, right, than 6.5. Right? The lower the interest rate, the more likely you're able to cash flow because the payments are lower. So there's so many benefits, and they're all packed to one, but this one is the one that blew my mind. And I'm still don't understand it. But it's true. Okay? Then you're going to have a seller also sign what's called a limited power of attorney, and this gives me the right to attend, to do act on their behalf relating to this house. Once it's in my name, I don't really need too much of it, but it helps me talk to the bank. It can, help with, changing things if it's still messed up at the bank. It's just a good thing to have, right? It's a limited power of attorney pertaining to that property. All right? By the way, this doesn't really work well for realtors. Real estate agents, if your seller wanted to do this, what would you tell them? They'll say it's illegal. Oh, they might say it's illegal. Yeah, it's not illegal. But think about that. The real estate agents, why would I ever tell my seller to give up the deed and keep the mortgage in their name? I would never tell my seller to do that. It's actually not a very wise thing to do. It's dangerous. It's kind of risky. If you have crappy credit, maybe you don't care. But if you have good credit, it's really risky, right? Because they can mess that up if they don't pay it, and it might be harder to get back. Now, of course, there's different advanced strategies that might help you get that back from them later if you need to, or that could get it back in their hands if they needed to. However, this is not something that, I don't talk to real estate agents about this one, except you guys are real estate agents who are talking about off-market deals, right? That's what I'm talking about. These are off-market deals, okay? So then,
That power of attorney, do you have to update that periodically?
do what?
That limited power of attorney.
No. Not unless they request it, but you're not going to, if you can't find the seller, you don't know where they are, you're not going to be able to get it updated anyway.
The bank may say that they want it.
Once you're authorized to the bank, you should be fine. Yep. Then you want to determine your exit strategy, okay? Or hopefully you're doing this even at the time you're finding the great deal. Really, these might be kind of different orders, but they're kind of all tied together, right? So we talked about some of the different options, right? You could lease option it to a tenant buyer. Jim likes that one. You could flip it or sell it. Flip it and sell it, fix it up, sell it. Okay, like I did with that one that I didn't mean to. I really wanted to wrap it. You could rent it. You could land contract it, which is the way you would do a wrap. Okay, in Michigan, I would really recommend you do a land contract wrap because it's like an eviction to get people out instead of a foreclosure, which is much more expensive and it takes a lot longer. Okay, so you would want, if you're going to wrap, you want to sell on the land contract, not a mortgage. I mean, you could sell on a mortgage, but it's just a lot more expensive. But do not sub to it, which means I'm not going to give up the deed of a house I already got the deed from someone else on. And I would never do that to a seller. Never. Never. I mean, never. Well, I might if it was Jim made a lodge, because I know he'd pay it. You know what I mean? Like, I would not risk the seller's credit for that. I would never. I'd just land contract it instead or something. Keep control, right? Because or give it back to the seller. If you don't want it, give it back. Talk to the seller. Have a conversation. Get it back to him or whatever you got to do. But don't subject to it to somebody else. Don't give up that deed. Because now, all of a sudden, the seller doesn't even know who's got their deed. And what if the mortgage goes bad? They're coming after you, by the way. I mean, physically. Maybe not legal. They don't have a leg to stand on. But physically, they're like, you ruined my credit, All right. Then you want to close on the property, right? Close with the title company who gets it. Legacy Title definitely does all mine. And they know about Subject-Tos. Is Lloyd still here? Yeah, where's Lloyd? Lloyd, where are you? Up here. Up in the back. Oh, there he is. Okay, in the very back. So, I mean, Lloyd does a lot of the closings for the investor world, right? Because they understand it. They have a whole division just for weird things like this. A to B closings, transactional funding, Subject-To deals, land contracts, wraps, all that kind of stuff. And Zach, too, from Legacy, by the way. Zach's right up there. He's here every month, too, Zach is. The mortgage terms are key, right? We talked about that. Especially, hopefully, that low interest rate thing, was that cool for you guys? Yeah, it's very cool for me. I think about that a lot when I think about Subject-Tos. I'm always like, okay, what's that rate? Okay, how much would it be? All right, don't take the deed if you can't make the payment. Don't take it if you can't make it. Don't screw it up for the rest of us, right? Meaning that we don't want Subject-Tos to ever become outruled or outlawed or whatever because investors took people's deeds and never paid the payment and messed up their credit, right? So if you can't make the payment, don't take it. By the way, that 7-year mortgage I told you that has 7 years left, that actually came from one of my students that came to me and said, I need your advice on something. And I said, well, what is it? And he goes, well, I got this Subject-To deal. I only need like $4,000 down and I can take over this payment and it's only 7 years left on the mortgage. And I go, and the question is what? Well, what should I do? And I go, are you really asking me that? You should do it. It's a sweet deal. Why wouldn't you do it? And he goes, I can't. And I go, why? And he said, because I know that if I have 1 month where the tenant doesn't pay me rent, my wife will kill me. That's what he told me. And I go, oh, that's a bummer. And I said, so what do you want to do? And he goes, I need to wholesale it. And I'm like, I'm listening. That's how I bought it. He wholesaled it to me. And I did this deal. It was back when they had that thing where you could, I don't know, get some kind of credit or whatever. And I ended up giving him payments over time. I didn't pay him money up front. I paid the $4,000 and then I just paid him over time, whatever we worked out. I can't remember what it was. But he was thrilled, so was I.
Hey, Wendy, I've heard people overpaying in the case of Subject-Tos. When does that make sense?
Overpaying?
Yeah, like paying over market value. I know.
It would be rare.
Okay, all right.
There are cases that the price could be more than you should pay. But all these other things need to exist. Like a lot's going toward principal each month, so that payment is going to catch up really quick, and maybe the split between what that is and mortgage rental rates could be significant. That may be a case. I don't usually like to buy deals where I start in the hole.
Okay.
That's kind of a joke, but you know what I mean? It's serious too. I really don't like to start negative because then I got to crawl my way out. There are some cases that might make sense. It depends. You got to look at the whole picture, not just price. Just like with lease options, I don't look at just price. I got to look at the whole terms. How much is going toward it every month? How much cash flow can I make on it? Know your exit strategy if the mortgage is called due. Okay, make sure you know that on that. All right, so if you guys feel like you're in the rat race and you're like, hey, I really want to find something else that's going to work for me and I like this idea of Subject-Tos, great. I'm going to tell you about my course. If you're interested, you should buy it. If you're not, no harm, no foul.